So a warm welcome to everyone for our PCQuest 35 years journey from 1987 to 2022. Today we will be discussing Indian computing in the pre-PC world, and we have the perfect guest to do that. Mr. Veer Sagar was in college in the 1950s and started working in the 1960s. In the year the 1984 new computer policy was unveiled, he was president of the PC division of Fujitsu ICIM Limited, and later went on to become president and CEO of DCM Data Products and DCM Systems. He is now chairman of Selectronic India Limited and a management advisor. Welcome to the show, Mr. Veer Sagar. It's really great to have you.
Thank you very much, Sunil.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
You know, DataQuest, Cyber,
Yeah.
Media, and I grew up together in the IT industry.
Right.
So, there, years back, when IT was not well known, and Shyam Malhotra and PG,
Right.
the two original pioneers of IT reporting.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of memories of DataQuest and Cyber Media.
Okay.
It's a great pleasure to be here and go down memory lane.
Yeah.
Because it so happened that we grew together and I was there in the middle of all these happenings.
Right.
Very, very lucky that I was in the middle of all this happening.
Right.
First, as the supplier of IT in Dunlop, when we set up the 1401, IBM 1401 in 1966, 65, 66.
Yeah.
Then as a user in Dunlop, when I went back to the marketing department and then became general manager. And later on, also as a salesperson, as the selling of the ICL systems. Then later on, as a design, R&D, manufacturing, sales in DCM. And now as a back office. So it's been a very exciting journey. And I'm so blessed to have been there right in the middle.
So, that's what I like. Like, we are talking of 35 years, but you are beyond that. You are beyond 50 years. So I think let's start our trip down memory lane from there. I mean, today's readers cannot even imagine life before the 80s. So I'd like to know, what was computing in India like from the late 1950s, say, to the early 1970s? I mean, how did the government use the computer? What about the private sector? Who were the type of users? What were the costs? So if you just could go back to the early days, if you can just like informally tell me.
Actually, when we started computerization, there were no computer. In fact, for a long time, till Pramod Mahajan came in during Mr. Vajpayee's time, there was no IT ministry. The Department of Electronics for a long time reported to the Department of Atomic Energy. The secretary was from there. Till later on, Mr. Vittal came in as probably the first IAS secretary. Now, the excitingly was when the first time computers came in, it was an IBM 1401. It was refurbished. What IBM did was they imported scrapped computers from US 1401 obsolete systems, refurbished it here in their factory in Bombay and gave it to us on lease. And they used to charge very, very heavy lease, which paid almost like 8.5 lakhs per year. Right? I mean, in 1960s, 65, to pay that kind of money. But of course, with that came maintenance, which also came a suited engineer. Then IBM engineer would come in a 3-piece suit stitched in Hong Kong with a lackey carrying his briefcase and toolkit. And of course, he did provide a lot of support in system design, and IBM software came in with it. I mean, remember the most famous in those days was the bill of material software, which required a lot of help from IBM. So that what it was. And all that it had was 4 tapes and 2 removable disk drives. It was quite a challenge to program on it. You had to program with cards, punch the program in cards, assemble the program, and modifying that was a major pain. And then also, if you wanted to do a bigger system, like when in Dunlop, we wanted to do total information system, integrate sales, purchasing, manufacturing, accounting, everything, it was not possible. So we had to remove the disk, put the sales disk, remove the sales disk, put the purchasing disk, and then take some left, extract information and leave it on the tape, and ultimately bring the tape together. And a huge printer, massive printer. So with 132 characters this way, and it comes in pages with Spock's holes in it. And it could come, and you had about 4 carbon copies. You could get 4 carbon copies. So it was great fun in those days. And the only companies, place where you could learn was ISI, Statistical Institute in Calcutta. They started with the British strange computer. I don't remember what it was. Later on, when they realized the stuff, they started training people in computers. So those days, all programmers had to go through a 2-year course in ISI before they came in and learning autocoder. Then later on, the IIT Kanpur, particularly, I know because we got a lot of people from there, Kanpur and Madras, etc., taught computer programming. It was a strange beast.
Yeah.
And if you look at the thing, the room was huge.
Right.
Massive room with air conditioning, with ducts coming under, ducts coming on top. Right? And you could not enter, take your shoes off. And only authorized person, like a temple, very strict Hindu, Orthodox Hindu temple. You take your shoes off, right? Dust yourself, come in, and nobody, you can't even touch, get anywhere near. If your own data, you had to give it to the ETP department for inputting. So, and they gave you the output. And ultimately, I remember in Dunlop, departments were reorganized based on their computer program.
So this sounds quite exotic and even on one level cumbersome. So I'm just thinking this is how you began. It must have been very tough. But then the going got even tougher in 77. Because, 77, politically, we know that the Congress government was booted out. And I think Coca-Cola being booted out was the most famous thing which people remember. But it wasn't just Coca-Cola, it was IBM. So I'm just thinking,
IBM was good.
Yeah, yes. So I'm just thinking, what was the environment like from 77 to 80? From the beginning, it described.
See, in those days, when I think it was George Fernandez who became the industry minister. I don't think
it was George Fernandez. It was Janta Party, George Fernandez. Yes, correct. Morarji Desai, Janta Party, George Fernandez. Correct.
Yeah, so they had this thing called FERA, which said that no foreign company can own majority shares. So you have to dilute. And Coca-Cola and IBM said, sorry, we are not diluting, and they left. ICL diluted and created a company called ICIM. They wanted to make sure that India said International Computers Indian Manufacturing. So they were here. And then, but the problem was not that. The problem was there were a lot of 1401s. And maintaining 1401s was quite a big thing. So then they said, what do we do? So government then formed a computer maintenance corporation. And also, I think Grover was a person. Excuse me if I got the names right, but I think it was Grover who set up also a maintenance company who provided a lot of support for computers in those days. And we then wanted in Dunlop, when I say we in Dunlop, wanted to upgrade it to a 360. So IBM 360, 370 in those days. Now we had to provide, in those days, the requirement was you had to provide almost 100-page plus justification of why you want to import the computer, how it will affect the country, and hold your breath, how it will affect the farming, agriculture sector. Right? Then what disk size you want, why you have to do disk mapping, why this memory, you do memory mapping, and ultimately you have to give that to the Department of Electronics. The Department of Electronics was a small 2-room thing in Khan Market. It had 2 wonderful people in there. In those days, Colonel Balasubramaniam, who became later general, and Major Nandrajuk. 2 very fantastic people. And then later on, DOE also had very good people. And one of them still I touch so they're very, very good people there. So we had to give them, then the department formed an expert committee. We did not include you. Right? It had other people who then went through your proposal to see whether you deserve to get a computer or not. And if so, what size, what disk, and once you got that approval, then another committee was set, a financial committee in which you were a member, to decide who will supply that computer and at what price. I was later on member of quite a few of these expert committees to decide what computers should, about importing of computers. And during that period, I remember we had a lot of pressure from various people in the department, not of electronic, but different government departments, because those days India was very, very pro-Soviet. You buy a Russian computer. In fact, one secretary, not of IT, but another department, he met me, a very powerful secretary in the government. And he said, you buy Russian computer. So I said, no, because Robotron with the Russian computer was in, I think, in IEL in Delhi. And I saw there was more downtime than uptime. And administrative staff college also had that. I said, sorry, I'm not buying. Then secondly, I said that all the manuals are in Russian. So he said, you know, they're IBM copy. You have a lot of friends in IBM. Ask them to give you the English copies. That was the state. Then ultimately, anyway, we were given a Burroughs system. And I think what the government used to do in those days was decide, okay, next 5 will go to Burroughs. Right? And they'll call Burroughs and negotiate with them. Okay, we're going to buy 5 systems, give me the best price. So this is how I think, because then we got a Burroughs system, which is not a good deal, but it was quite a tough job. And when you think of it, in a computer system room in those cost as much as the computer itself. 1 crore for setting up the room and 1 crore for the computer. And a very interesting thing, when the computer was brought to Shahganj factory, Dunlop factory, the Burroughs engineers came and measured from the various culverts and the overhead bridges, etc., from Dum Dum Airport in Calcutta to our Shahganj factory, to make sure that all the equipment come through fine. The day the computer was to land and come from, all of us are standing at the factory, waiting to receive the computer. It's supposed to come at 6 till 9 o'clock. There was no trace of the trucks. So we said, what the hell has happened? And finally we found that instead of sending the printer from US somewhere, they sent it from Burroughs, Brazil. And that was 2 feet higher than the other printer. And that printer hit one of the culverts and broke into pieces. But that kind of detailing was done in those days. And with us, Burroughs in those days, it was TCS was the dealer for Burroughs in India. They sent today, very, very big people in those days, Ram Darai and Dr. Jain, to install the computer in Shahganj, Dunlop computer, and then get the programs written in autocoder, IBM language, converted to Burroughs language. That was one of the conditions of the sale. And the problem with the government in those days, when word leaked out to Mr. Moraji Desai through my director that Dunlop was looking for an IBM system and they were not getting. Then I was called and I said, no, we're not looking for IBM. So this is the problem, that we have these programs which are proprietary. They will not run on any other computer. So that is the department, Dr. Colonel Balasubramanian said, fine, we'll get the supplier to convert it. So that's part of the condition. This is great. I mean, good days.
Yeah, really good days. No, it sounds very exciting. So I'm sure, but all this, we cannot even imagine. You're saying 1 crore for the computer, 1 crore for the, room, and and all politics, bureaucracy, real estate. I mean, all these things counted for a computer. We cannot even imagine.
And not only that, in those days, we also had what's called intelligent terminals.
Okay.
Dumb terminals. There was one intelligent terminal in the center, in the computer room, which was the data entry from, and dumb terminals which could go as far as the wire can take. So there was a physical limitation. So we had departments linked up, but they could not do anything there except input some documents. There was a separate department called input-output department. So all the documents would come to this input-output departments. They will punch, key, do whatever, input it. Output would come, they would check it, and then give you the output. And the format of the output was decided by the IT department, in which form they will give you. And it was quite a thing. There were departments resisting, computers coming in because they thought the jobs at stake. And actually that didn't happen.
Okay.
And Dunlop was very lucky in a way, far-sighted. They took the general secretary of the union. They transferred him. He was in the finance division. They transferred him to the computer division on promotion. So the union issues were all sorted out. But then he saw that we are not looking to reduce people. If anything, it will add people. What it will do is probably do some rearrangement of skills. And when he saw the department building up, and so the thing died off. But we had a lot of trouble in East later on. I remember when we supplied a computer, this is when I was sales, to Standard Chartered. They could not install their computer in Calcutta. For a long time, it was in the ICL office. Until one weekend, we quietly shoved it into their office, went into their office. But there was a lot of union trouble. And if you look back at union trouble, the worst issue was the agreement made with the banks. Those days, now he became, later on became governor of RBI, and then there was Dr. and there was head of CMC. They formed a committee and they introduced what's called ALPMs. All ledger posting machines or something. Truncated PCs which could only stand alone, which was a major pain, because then the major advantage of computer was still SBI, who went on their own route, ignoring all the government RBI directives, got this networking PCs to take care of their banking. ALPM was a big thing. It gave a lot of push to computers and also to imports, because their servers were specified as some tadpole technology with Unix.
So, all this sounds a bit like Alice in Wonderland. I mean, you used to live in a different world. Yeah. But
yes, if you look back in those days, I learned all my marketing selling computer systems internally. And then you learn so many things, how to simplify, how to take the fear away, because they were all scared. Departments were scared that our power will go away. In those days, when a manual system, individuals had a lot of power because they had knowledge. You want to go to inventory, you want to know something, there was a Babu looking after the stores. He knew exactly how much he's got where. No, he felt my job is at stake, because anybody will now have access to the information wherever they want. So they had to be had. Similarly, even senior departmental heads had to be convinced that yes, if their job is not at stake, that it's going to become easier. So selling a computer system, and everybody said, great idea, computer, must do it, but do it for the other department. Leave me alone.
So I'm just wondering, but then probably the landmark year was 1984, because 1984 was when the new computer policy came. Then the PC started coming. So I'd like to know, how was it like in 83, 84 when it was imminent? What was the reaction when it was announced, and what happened in the next few years? If you could just take me over to the transition era, how did that go?
In 90, till that time, what used to happen, right? That if you manufactured something, what the components you could import, everything was controlled by a department called DGST. And you had to get licenses, how many systems you could make. And if you made one more than that, your MD was called to Delhi and told off what the hell is going on. So at that time, that got opened up, and they allowed PCs, motherboards, etc. They didn't allow motherboard, they allowed chips, etc. to be imported. So a lot of Indian companies were set up making PCs, basically smaller, not PCs and minis. Among them were like companies like, of course, DCM, then there was Zenith, ORG, right? HCL, there's a company called PCI, Patni, IDM. So a lot of these companies came up who bought chips and design. In fact, there were three types of companies in those days then suddenly. One was these companies which had their own internal R&D. Companies like Wipro, DCM, HCL. even ECIL made some, which designed and manufactured their own computers. Then they had PCL, Zenith, ORG, who assembled computers in India. And then, of course, we had the gray market. And we used to sell computers for 1 lakh for a PC. And a mini was about 3-4 lakhs. So PCs was 1 lakh. Till Shiva Shankaran came in. And it essentially because the duties were very high, almost like 150%. Till Shiva Shankaran came in. And Shiva Shankaran, I don't know how he managed what, but he brought down the prices to 40,000 rupees. Not 10%, 20% cheaper.
That's huge.
40,000 to 25,000 rupees. And then Zenith followed suit. At that moment, all our prices had to crash. And we could not compete because our cost, because we're designing in-house, our BOM was much higher than Zenith's and PCS and this Shiva selling prices. I know a lot of times when we were competing in government tenders, I used to buy from Shiva. Now, the problem was buying from Shiva computers was it was cash and carry. Went to Madras, gave him the check and took the stuff and took it to Delhi, back to Delhi. There was no maintenance, no support, nothing. And I asked Mr. Shiva Shankar, and I said, look, how can, he said, you'd buy 2 extra pieces and cannibalize them for support. It'd still be cheaper, which is true. So once he brought down, then PCs then became little more widely used. And slowly that mystery of PCs started disappearing. But when we sold PCs in DCM and ECIL, and IKIM, it was a major sales marketing effort. And then other thing that happened was there were a lot of Indian companies. Then after some time, imports were allowed. So the digital systems, you could import fully assembled systems. What happened? There were a lot of Indian companies who said, we are multinationals, we do not buy Indian product, we will import the best. Digital was making computers in India with Hinditron. And so at those days, used to use a mini with intelligent terminals with PCs. So this particular MNC and the EDP manager was a very good friend of mine from my CSI days. And he said to me, this is the position, what can I do? So I talked to Hinditron. I knew those people very well. They promote Indian promoters of Hinditron who set up this. And I said, look, you don't have PCs. This company wants PCs as part of the total deal. Buy from us, we'll brand it digital and give it to you. And we'll only, and whatever we're making for you, we will not make for anybody else. And that company paid premium to buy computers made by us with digital brand. So, I've been very lucky that there was in those days also from the industry side, other side, there was a CSI who came in first, right? Which was basic users dominated by government people and by professors and some different. Then a mate came in. I think it was 1980s somewhere. Mate came in for hardware. And I happened to be on the EC of Mate also. I was in the EC of CSI for a long time, the EC of Mate for a long time. Then in 80s, later on, when software, and in those days, software was given free with hardware. And companies were allowed to import duty-free hardware so that they can write software. And software was allowed free. Then after that, when people started exporting software, then they realized that software requirements are totally different. That lobbying is totally different. So a NASCOM was set up, and I happened to be on NASCOM AC also for a long time. And then now today we have, of course, MATE, NASCOM, and there's an ESC, which is totally donated to export, which is of electronic and software services. So a lot of these companies, these came up, and I remember going with the mate teams and later on with NASCOM teams. We went to sell India Inc. We never sold our company because they said India must be joking. We went India Inc. And we used to always have these stalls in which we had our one little table, 2 chairs, but the stall was the India pavilion. Everywhere we presented India, and even in our visiting cards, right? It was NASCOM or mate. But okay, at the bottom, your designation is there, CEO, DCM. So, okay, so when you talk about India, you assume that when you are going then to sell your product, they assume all the good things you have said about India are applicable to your product. So we got a lot of mileage and we got companies in. It was a tremendous effort those days with Divang Mehta and Mr. Vithal. I'm sorry, my thing is becoming unstructured.
No problem. No, that's what I said. Like, we want to go down memory lane. So, I mean, what I was thinking is this is a very fascinating 30, 40 years of India's independence. What happened? So maybe we can end it with the last question is then how do you see the last 35 years? Because you have described the first 35 years in a great manner.
See, one of the good things that happened was India, there's software, although we had very good skills, and Y2K is probably the biggest motivator for that. Previously, software came in because all big companies, IBM, DEC, Burroughs, all of them had their own proprietary operating system. So their software, which was written for one operating system, would not run on another computer. And sometimes within the same company, when you went up to the mainframe, had different operating systems. So one of the jobs that we got in this, and TCS took the lead in this, was conversion. Convert the existing programs from whatever language it was to the programs that they have to go. So software export started with that. And a lot of it was manpower exports. Right? But it started with that. Then came Y2K, which let people realize, oh, these guys can think, they know our system, they know mainframe. And exports shot up. And one of the good things about software, IT in general, whether it's hardware or software, we're only dealing with international market. So we were competing with the best in the world. So all through, from the beginning, we had quality, reliability as part of the Indian DNA, which is not there in most places. So therefore, the quality of Indian software got established from the beginning. It's now that the domestic has started coming up in a big way. But otherwise, it was only export. And now for a company, when we went, a lot of people realized, okay, you're a big TCS, right? Or Infosys, you are known. But you're a DCM and you go in the international market, you're not known. So how do they know you are good or bad? So we started doing differentiation through quality. And by quality, it means certification. And then we started at the CMM level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 coming in. There were more CMM level 5 companies in India than the rest of the world put together. Because that's the only, okay, you won't tell a guy we are a CMM level 5 company, that, okay, in their mind, they know where you are, where you stand in terms of documentation, in terms of quality, in terms of reputation. So they know where you stand. So most of us then did this. So India had those days, every company was getting CMM level done. And a lot of companies have disappeared from those days. There was Silver Line and a whole lot of companies. A lot have disappeared and a lot are still there. PC, unfortunately, did not last. Indian manufacturing. PCs themselves grew. But because of all this pricing issue, etc., we found that Indian manufacturing then became, there's a strange thing, the component pricing, duties and the raw material duties were so unfavorable that manufacturing did not make sense. In fact, we in DCM, when I was in DCM, we used to design technology products. In fact, DCM was the first in the world to design a 486 based PC. Actually, we positioned as a mini because to make money and put a Unix operating system on that. And we made that. Then we said, okay, and we actually sold that technology to people. And for a long time, we said, okay, let's sell motherboards, 486 motherboards. We used to get, from something from Taiwan, something from Singapore, and bring it here. The import due time took about 1 week. Clearing from customs took another week. By that, we take production, etc. took a week. Sending out of customs took 1 week sometime. And this period became too long because the prices kept dropping. So if you took a price, in those days, about every sort of couple of months, prices dropped by 5%. So we found that when we export, by the time we get through all this protocol of customs clear, that 4 weeks had passed. The customer wouldn't then take the goods. We were in a big dilemma in those days. What do we do? If you bring it back, you have to pay 150% duty. If we scrap it, wherever it is, there was a cheaper cost. The RBI had to be answered. Okay, why is this product gone and no money has come? What are you doing? And then if in any case, if you just keep it in your office, neither scrap it, nor bring it back, you have trouble after 180 days because you're supposed to get all exchange money in by 180 days. So ultimately, we just scrapped, we said no more exports. We took a big hit and we said no more exports of hardware. That's why software export is good because it doesn't. Another interesting thing is when I moved to back office, this is 1997, 25 years almost now. We wanted to set up back office, and to get we became STPI member. They don't know what back office meant. So when they asked me, okay, how will the material come? Input. So I said along this wire, voice will come. How will it go out? I said along this wire in word form. They thought I had gone, I'm fooling them. And permission was refused. You don't know what product do you make. You have to see a product. So, there was a lot of education in both ends. It was good fun.
Yeah.
And you looked in the company when I was in the IT, in the EDP or IT department, you looked at something out of this, you're not part of the world. The IT guys, fancy boys.
Yeah, so I was just thinking, like, I know we can go on forever, so that's a great overview.
Yeah,
maybe
sure.
we can just have one parting shot. I want to know, because since you have seen the last 50-60 years, can India overtake US and China in terms of technology? Can we become number one? If so, what will take us there and by what year? Probably if you can just
I have a different take on technology.
Okay.
And I don't think we need to go and create technology because we don't have the infrastructure or the ecosystem for that. We need to write on technology, right, and make technology a slave. And I think India can take the world lead, not so much on software, right, but on back office services. Because what does India have? Now, I mean, this is a very unpopular thing which I keep saying. If you look at it at the top level, we have very limited skills. And the good skills are all migrating to US anyway. So we have very limited skills. And we have limited funds, in spite of all the ecosystems of VCs, etc. But where we have in plenty are at the lower level, educated, unemployed, English-speaking youth. India is also the issue of jobs. So this is a great match. And today, all you require in terms of infrastructure is the internet. And we have just found that during this COVID, we are doing all our back office from small villages or towns in India, in Haryana. So it's possible. All we need to do is to focus, and the government gives enough incentives to bring in back office. See, what is happening is today, a lot of big companies have brought their back office into India. I mean, out of the 500 Fortune 500 companies, I think more than 300 are already in India. And out of them, probably 75% are in Cyber Hub in Gurgaon. What we need to get are the middle level and the smaller companies, which also need the support, but they don't know how to get. In India, there are small companies, SMEs, who don't know how to get this support because they don't have a credibility with the American customer, with the foreign customer. The foreign customer does not have a credibility with you. So somewhere, if Indian government could form this kind of thing where we can actually bring in kind of India Inc. What we do for software, we do for services, and bring in jobs. We'll solve the job problem and the amount of money, and we can overtake anybody in the world because we have numbers. The reason American companies have come to India is because we could provide numbers. They say, can you add 100 desks? Yes, we can add 100 desks in 2 weeks. Can Philippines add? Philippines adds 1,000, and that's the end of the number there. So whether any other country, and in China, they don't have English. Not yet. So, and this is one area where we could go. And a lot of times, like what I do, speaking of English is not important. My back office just understanding is important. A lot of our people can understand English, can read English. But when it comes to talking, they're not very good, not very comfortable because they don't have practice. So there's a lot of, if I would be, look, for the next 25 years, services will keep on growing. It will be anti anything. Lockdown, problems, corona, nothing. Services will keep on recruiting. Offline services. We have just designed a platform for e-coaching in cricket, where you can actually take cricket coaching on the net. So E is the future, and we have the numbers. So this is what I would look at, and become leaders in this software. I'm a soft corner for this back office thing because I firmly believe in this, and I firmly believe that India's biggest problem is unemployment, and we need to take that as a focused thing, as a focused item. Unemployment is what we will attack.
Right.
One point in India is just unemployment. Educated, unemployed people coming from tier 2, tier 3 cities, because now it doesn't matter. With IT, you can be anywhere.
Right. Yeah. So I think that's
sorry, does it answer your question?
No, it answers my question because that's
sidetracked.
No, it is not sidetracked because as you said, we have to play to our strengths. No, you have to play to your strengths. IT services is also part of the technology industry. And I like your thing about giving employment to tier 2, tier 3 towns. I also believe that is our human resources skilling. That is the way to go future. So I think that's a very optimistic and positive note to end this.
It's possible.
Yeah.
It's possible. It's possible. And we have a good reputation for support software. We go down to US, if somehow we can form a way. Now ESC is doing this in their own little way by setting up offices and providing marketing support. But we need to have a total government initiative which actually encourages and gives you support and money.
So I would like to thank you, Mr. Veer Sagar. That was a very enlightening, engrossing discussion. I'm sure even our readers will go down a memory lane. It was a great trip.
No, thank you very much, Sunil, for having me. I mean, as I say, I have a lot of this thing with your company.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of memories together.
Yeah.
Okay. And thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you.